So, it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, and I wanted to give you a little bit of an update as to what I've been working on in Thrall. I've been pretty busy with life stuff as well as development, and so I wanted to just kind of let you know why it's been so long since I've uploaded. In case you haven't noticed, the links to the game right now are down. RPGmaker.net is currently down. The mods of the site are working on getting the website back up. We just had some hosting issues with the original host, which apparently just kind of disappeared, and the site died as a result. But it will be back up eventually, and Thrall will be available to download again soon. In the meantime, it's not currently available. I am working on getting Thrall put onto other platforms such as itch and Steam, but for now it's just not available. So I'm going to keep the same original links because they will eventually work again once the site comes back up, but for now it is what it is. But anyway, let's get into some of the updates as to what I've been working on with Thrall. So first off, I have modified combat. One of the issues with a turn-based RPG, especially one that focuses so heavily on loot, is that it's easy to fall into a trap of having combat exclusively be focused on just attack, 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 maybe use a skill, attack, attack, use an item, attack, attack, heal, attack, 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 and it can get kind of stale. So what I have done is I've modified one of the commands. Now, in RPG Maker, the defend command is arguably one of the least used commands in battle. All it really does is increase your defense until your next action. It reduces your damage, the damage you take, and that's really it. I did have some skills in the skill trees for Lionel and Brutus that actually used defend and altered its functionality a bit, but it did still feel a little bit stale. It didn't really feel that useful. So, one of the first updates that I've done is I've actually changed the defend command to an alternate attack called special. So you've got your attack, your special, your skills, and your items. Skills are still just your action skill and whatever overdrives you have, but special is actually dependent on whatever weapon type you have equipped. So your attack is just your attack, but your special is actually dependent on your weapon type. So for swords, your special is actually a multi-hit. It'll hit twice. It deals half the amount of damage, I think actually maybe even a little bit less. I believe it's 40% the damage of a normal attack. So his attack deals about 355, whereas his special will deal about 130, 140 per hit. It also has less overdrive gain. So for example, if I use a skill with Lionel here that empties his overdrive gauge, so his gauge is empty now, a normal attack will fill about 1/10, and a special will fill about the same amount total, but half as much per hit. So where that's actually really useful is applying status ailments. And I'm actually going to get into that in a bit here because there's been some modifications to that as well. Blunt weapons, their normal attack pattern is sort of like this jump strike. Blunt weapons have a special where the gauge you can see in the corner down here will actually charge, and then once that fills, the attack is executed automatically. It deals a bonus 50% damage, but it does take some time to charge. And then for axes, the special is actually a self-damaging attack. As you can see, Brutus took some damage when he did that, but it deals increased damage. So if you have skills that can actually restore some of your health when you kill an enemy, for example, Brutus has one where if he kills an enemy, he'll restore 10% of his health, you can counteract the effect of that axe special while still getting the damage boost. There are two other specials, and I will just highlight those real quick. So let's give a spear to Lionel, and let's give Mel a dagger. So this, the knife special, the base attack has actually been changed so that it actually has a melee attack. You just kind of slip in behind and do your basic attack. And then the special is actually an aimed attack. You can see there's that little crosshair that appears, and that deals reduced damage but has perfect accuracy. So accuracy and evasion does not factor in when using that special. If an enemy is immune to being hit, it will still miss, but in any other situation, it's a perfect accuracy move, and it even comes with a 5% crit chance bonus. Now for spears, you've got your basic attack here, but your special, this is what I love about this one, will hit every enemy on the field. Now here's the thing about these specials, is that there are multi-weapons. I believe I've got one here. Yes, so this sword has the multi-accessory, which means that it actually gets a multi-hit by default. And that accessory can appear on any type of weapon: sword, axe, spear, knife, or blunt. So what happens if you have a multi-weapon and you use that special? Well, for swords, your special is a multi-hit, so your attack is now a multi-hit. But what is your special? It's now a 4 times hit. And the same case for all the other specials. Instead of a single hit with its special ability, it actually gets double the effect. Now, multi-weapons by default come with a slight damage penalty, so that kind of makes sense. But that is essentially what I've done to replace the defend command in this game. I've added a alternate attack that has a little bit more utility, but has a slight penalty to it. So for swords, daggers, and spears, it'll deal reduced damage, but you can either increase the number of hits, the number of enemies you're hitting, or your accuracy. And then for maces and axes, you get a damage buff, but there's a penalty either to how long it takes to execute, or the amount, or you take a little bit of recoil damage, basically. So that's the specials. I've also had to modify some of the skills in the skill trees to make up for it. So now, for example, Lionel had this mercy skill where after he used defend for the next 15 turns, his attacks would not kill enemies. That's been replaced where now just his special will not kill enemies. It will immobilize enemies, meaning that it basically takes them out of the battle, but they stay on screen. What that does is it sets them up to be killed by other allies, which can trigger their kill skills, such as... Oh, sorry, my computer's a little bit slow today. More than just a little. Oh, Thrall's not responding. That's lovely. There we go. Okay. So, for example, Brutus has a couple different kill skills. Let's find one here. Let's see. Here's one. Killing an enemy gives yourself burn status. That's useful for some of Brutus's other skills where he gets buffs if he's on fire. But by using Mercy, Lionel can incapacitate a foe and leave it for Brutus to kill so that he can trigger his kill skills. In addition to that, Lionel actually now has Mercy skills, where if he immobilizes an enemy with Mercy, he actually gets some buffs himself. So that was one of the examples of the defend skills that got replaced. In addition, Brutus has some defend skills now that have been replaced for special skills. So now, take aim, if he uses his special, his next attack gets perfect accuracy. And if he uses attack, his next special will get perfect accuracy. The only caveat to that being that it's only the first hit in the attack pattern. So you do have to be a little bit cautious about what types of weapons you equip so that you have the right kind of special for what you're going for. That also offsets the penalty of his Fury skill, but there are some nuances to that. But this is not a video about the skill trees, it's more just about some of the changes I've made. So, change number 1, Defend has now been replaced with Special, adds a little bit more versatility to the combat. Change number 2 actually has to do with status ailments, and you may have seen a little bit of it as I was demonstrating here. The 3 elemental status ailments, Burn, Freeze, and Seize, have been changed. So Mel here has a fire weapon, Lionel has an ice weapon, and we're going to equip Brutus with a shock weapon. And I'm going to show you what these skills do. what the new status ailments do. So, for Mel, Burn has a slightly different effect. Let's see if I can actually trigger Burn status here. Oh, come on. Oh, wow. That's unlucky. Oh, that's really unlucky. Okay, let's try using Fireburst. Maybe that'll trigger it easier. There we go. So Burn status has changed. As you saw when it got applied there, that little 16 popped up. That is damage over time. Burn only does damage over time now. It used to reduce accuracy. It does not do that anymore. It only does damage over time. However, one of the benefits to it is that if you see this little number in the corner here, that 1, that increases, and that was a 35 that popped up instead of 16. So Burn status will do damage over time, but now it actually will stack up to 5 times. And it deals damage to enemies over time based on their level, stacking up to 5 times. And every time you apply a new burn stack, the turn counter is reset. So that was one change that I thought was pretty good. Ice also has a change to its status ailment. So Freeze also stacks, as you can see by this little thing in the corner here. So what Freeze used to do is it would completely immobilize an enemy as soon as you applied 1 stack, but it only lasted 5 turns. Now it lasts the full 10 turns that all the other elemental status ailments do, but it reduces enemy dexterity by 40%, as well as their damage, their attack, by 25%, and that can stack up to 3 times. And with multi-weapons, you can actually stack it even faster. Let's try using a special here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as you can see, we're now at 3 stacks here. Now, you can't see the enemy ATB gauge, but with 3 stacks, the enemy is essentially completely immobilized. And it, instead of reducing enemy resistance, which was useless, it actually now reduces enemy attack. So if you only have 1 or 2 stacks, they'll still deal less damage, but at 3 stacks, they become completely immobilized. But one of the more interesting ones is shock damage. So now, when an enemy gets seized, as you can see by the little lightning bolt over the enemy head there, what Seize will do is it will prevent skill use. That was that way before, but now what Seize would do is it would reduce enemy dexterity a little bit, but I thought that was too close to the effect of Freeze, and I wanted to make it a little bit different. So now what Seize will do is that when an enemy is seized, if you attack another enemy with shock damage, keep your eye on this enemy here. You see that little spark that popped up? That is chain damage. So if a separate enemy gets attacked with shock damage, again, keep your eye on the seized enemy. So the enemy that gets hit for the shock damage, 20% of that damage goes to all seized enemies. So with that, if you attack an enemy and you seize it, and you attack a different enemy with shock, you can chain that damage between them. These changes to the status ailments were actually inspired by Hades. That was also one of the reasons I haven't uploaded in a while, is I actually got a Nintendo Switch and started playing Hades, and it kind of consumed me for a bit. But it also inspired some really good changes for this game. Both the specials and the status ailment changes were heavily inspired by Hades. I noticed that with the hangover stacks, you could increase the damage over time, and I thought that applied well with Burn. I noticed that chill stacks you can ramp up and you can slow down enemies, and I thought that actually makes a lot of sense as well to have it stack up. And once I figured out how to create stackable status ailments, it was an easy enough fix to translate that over to the freeze ailment as well. And then with Zeus emitting chain lightning between enemies, I thought that was actually a really nice touch that I could probably implement with Seize, and it worked out pretty well. It was a little bit of work to figure out how to get the animation to play, and I haven't been able to figure out how to make the pop damage come up for that, and I don't really know if it's necessary, because you can see enemy health bars underneath them, obviously not with the training dummies, but you can see the health bars underneath the enemies, and it does tick down when that pops up. So those are the first 2 changes. Status ailments have been changed, and weapons now have special attacks as well as their default attacks. But there's one more change that's been made as well, and that is to the guide, which you can now access from the menu at any time. I removed the skill guides because you can access them from the skill menu, which is when you're likely going to be using them anyway. You're not likely to look up a skill effect from anywhere except for the actual skill tree itself. So I removed them from the guide menu and I replaced it with this loot guide. Now the loot guide starts out empty, but what it does is that after you recruit Raphael to your keep, you can go and talk to him, and he will offer to appraise certain items. This is still a work in progress. Right now, all he can do is appraise everything at once, but what that will basically do is he will go through your entire inventory, your weapons, your armors, both that you have equipped and unequipped, and he will find any legendary loot, any unique loot, like for example this Fanged Royal here, basically anything that has a red flavor text. So I've got this Gloria, I've got this Prince, I've got the Hellfire, and I've got the Royal. And he will identify their effects. So if you appraise the loot, I'm just going to cruise through some of the dialogue here. It's all just placeholder for now anyway. So I'm wanting to offer the opportunity to appraise one item at a time if you want to appraise specific things, but for now it's just that he can appraise everything. He'll charge you a fee for it, and then when you appraise it, he will identify any loot that you haven't previously appraised. It will automatically open the guide, and he will add some pages to the guide just like this, so that you can actually see what these items, these legendary items are that you have appraised, and what their special effects are. My computer's painfully slow. Yeah, Thrall is not responding. At any rate, what this does is that when you identify and appraise items, legendary and unique loot, it will tell you what the type of the weapon is, what its flavor text is, and what its special effect is. So the Hellfire is actually one that got changed with the status element changes, where it's always fire elemental, and applying burn stacks with attacker special will apply 2 stacks instead of 1. And then there's even a little bit of trivia as to how I came up with the weapon. So, for example, the trivia on this weapon is that the name and flavor text references a partial quote from the song Hellfire from the movie The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Another example, if my computer ever loads. Oh, there we go. For example, the Royal. The trivia, the name and flavor text references a partial quote from King Solomon, and while a party member has the Royal equipped, winning a battle while that party member is alive causes enemies to drop loot 50% of the time as opposed to 2.5% of the time. Hence, to gain riches is wise as the flavor text for the Royal. So this gives you an opportunity to actually see what the special effect is of legendary and unique items and weapons and armors without having to look it up online. I know games like Borderlands don't really offer an explanation for unique effects on their items in the game. You have to actually look them up or just test them out for yourself. And now the way that this works is that it still encourages you to test the weapons and stuff out yourself to determine their effects, because you're likely only going to find these in the middle of a dungeon, and so if you want to know what it does right away, you have to test it out. But if you want to, you can wait until you get back to the keep, appraise it, and then actually look up what the special effect of these items does. And it doesn't force you to leave the game to look it up on a website online. That may be fine for some AAA games that have their own wikis, but I'm a solo indie dev. I want to make sure that people know what this stuff does without having to leave the game itself to do it. So that is appraising special unique loot. They each get their own individual guide entry, but in addition to that, I have prefixes. Now, one of the things about this loot system is that you have loot that has a prefix and a suffix. The suffix is basically just what the item is. It's a shield, a headband, a cloak, gauntlets, or in the case of unique loot, the Hellfire. But if it's not unique, sword, axe, club, whatever. But it also has a prefix, the Infernal Hellfire, educated shield, healing headband. And if you want to know what that prefix means, you can now look that up. So for example, this educated shield, I can tell by looking at it, it's a rare item, which means it has 2 components. And I can see here it's got bonus XP and shock. So those are the 2 components there. But let's just say, for example, these invigorating gauntlets, they have regen, but but it's a rare item, so it's got 2 components and there's no element. So I can't quite tell by looking at this what it is. I suspect it's bonus defense, but I don't know. So if I want to see what the invigorating prefix does, I've already appraised them. So if I go to the loot and I go to the prefixes, I can actually see the list of all the prefixes that I've appraised, as well as a counter to see how many I actually have appraised out of how many there are in the game. So you can see for epic weapon, Algific gives you bonus 10% accuracy, the ice element, and the multi-accessory. Now, let's just check those armors here that I brought up before. So educated, as I mentioned before, shock and bonus XP, no big surprise there. And then invigorating, we knew it was regen, but we didn't know the other one. And as I suspected, defense plus 20%. So you can actually see what that specific weapon or armor does, not just for its unique effect, but also for its prefix. You don't have to look it up online, it's just right here for you. This took a little bit of work, it took a little bit of time to actually get all the entries put into the guide, and it is all text-based. It will update as you find new things and appraise new things. It doesn't have to have a whole separate guide entry for everything, it just adds a new line of text for whatever you have unlocked. But yeah, this is the appraisal system for both unique loot and for prefixes. Yeah, I just wanted to make it easier for the player to figure out what their loot actually does without having to leave the game to do it. And considering this is a game that utilizes its own unique loot system that I made from the ground up custom for this game, it's not something that RPG Maker just naturally does. This was something I actually had to build myself. But because the game focuses so heavily on unique randomized loot, I wanted to make sure that the players actually knew what they had their hands on when they found it. So those are the main changes that have taken place for Thrall over the last month or so. I will be posting a blog about this as well when RPGmaker.net comes back up, whenever that happens. In the meantime, Thrall is not available to download online, but I am looking at getting it uploaded onto RPG Maker Web, Steam, and itch. Steam is going to be the main source, but that requires a bit of an investment, and not just financial. I have to put together marketing materials and screenshots and trailers and stuff like that, and that's just more work that I really want to do right now. But ultimately, this game will be available on Steam, so keep an eye out for that eventually. Not anytime soon, though. In the meantime, you can maybe even download it from the web archive if you're really determined, but eventually RPGmaker.net will come back up, and when it does, you can download the game then. I'm also working on remaking some of the dungeons using the procedural generation system that I created before, and until the current existing dungeons that I have are fully recreated, not necessarily the Shrouded Peaks, but Aleston, the Lyre Forest, and Bloodstone Mine. Jagged Lagoon doesn't need to be recreated because it's a bit of a different beast. But until I've recreated these 3 dungeons with procedural generation, I don't want to post an updated demo, and I'm not super keen on creating a game profile for the game on other platforms until that demo is ready, but we will see what happens. I may just get impatient and upload the current existing demo without all these updates. But I would rather upload a new version of this game, like on new platforms with all the current updates, just to give a full, accurate representation of what this game is going to be like on release. So that's it for this video. I just wanted to highlight some of the updates and yeah, see if I can get back into making videos again. It's been a while, so I want to see if I can stay consistent with that, or at least somewhat. But anyway, hope you have a good day, and I will catch you next time.